It's not always rainbows and butterflies. Running a traditional real estate team, when it's good, it can be really good. But when it's bad, it can be really bad if you're not focusing on your expense control. And that becomes very challenging when you have to make tough decisions and you're factoring in people's livelihoods. And that's never something that I've ever taken lightly.
I used to chase the ROI all the time, return on investment. And over the course of time, that has evolved into what I call return on life. Welcome, listeners. This is Randy Dick here on the Return on Life podcast, where it's not always about the ROI. And we're going to tear into some of that today with our great guest, but it's about the return on life and what do you want to get out of life. So we've got an awesome guest here, Jason Simard. He's been crushing real estate for the last 8.5 years. His first year, get this year, 135 sales in his very first year. He leads a team. He's got agents doing 70 deals plus a year. So just not only a beast in himself, but a great leader, great coach. And we've got an amazing guest today that we're going to talk about a lot of things, including life, including how to run a team, expenses, and all things in between. So welcome here, Jason. Thank you for joining me on the Return on Life podcast.
Hey, what a pleasure to be in the presence of a legend, Randy Dick. You've been doing some big things in this business for a lot longer than I have. So it's an honor to be here.
Well, you've been not only a guest here, but a guest at Realtor Collective, which is why I'm spinning Realtor Collective in my head all the time, because you've shared from stage a number of times and just absolutely crushed it. And you're one of our favorite Realtor Collective speakers of all time. So that's great to have that there and have you here. So it's exciting to have you on the podcast. Let's get into some things about life. I mean, this is about return on life, and it's not always about the ROI. And you've been bouncing around doing some things that have changed some of your world quite significantly. What's happening in Jason's world right now?
Oh man, Jason is Jason's going through some transitions in life, stuff that happens to people sometimes, you know. And Jason has just weathered a big market shift and running a big real estate team with a lot of expenses. It's not been the easiest thing, Randy. I'll tell you, we've had a lot of success in real estate, right? So people talk about the highlight reels, but let's talk about the things that most people won't talk about on here, but they'll talk about it behind closed doors. Let's just open that up today, my friend, because it's not always rainbows and butterflies. Running a traditional real estate team, you know about this, Randy, yourself. When it's good, it can be really good, okay? But when it's bad, it can be really bad if you're not focusing on your expense control. And so one of my problems that I've had is that my heart is bigger than my brain sometimes. I lead with a lot of heart. You know, I've hired some amazing people in my businesses that are like friends. I know their spouses, their kids. These are people that I like genuinely love and care about. And that becomes very challenging when you have to make tough decisions and you're factoring in people's livelihoods. And that's never something that I've ever taken lightly. And so one of the things that I've done to sort of run away from making those tough decisions is I've tried to diversify income. I've focused on growing and all that stuff. And unfortunately, like the perfect storm happened last year. The market really cooled down. And although we were performing very well against the market, but when you have these fixed overhead expenses, it certainly put me in a position where, you know, to be honest, I lost hundreds of thousands of dollars during an 8-month period on my traditional real estate team. And I'd never lost money on my team like that before. Luckily, I've diversified my incomes with revenue share and our coaching company, and we have different streams of income that we've diversified, which allowed me to sort of ride through that. But I'll tell you, Randy, when you're writing personal checks from your own savings to fund businesses, it's not easy, my friend. It's not easy. And it's something that like, it's a cross that very few people would bear. I don't know too many people that would continue to weather literally losses like that, because you know on the other side of that storm are rainbows, but it's not always easy to grind through that. And it wears on a guy. I mean, these gray hairs that I have coming in, I can tell you they've been earned this last 8 months.
Yeah, you know, it always looks really, really awesome from the outside until you get on the inside behind the closed doors. And I went through that as well last year, where I weathered a storm as well. And I had to make some really tough decisions like you've made, where you know, well, we've always done it this way and we've always served people this way. And we've got these amazing admin and staff and agents. And I had to do some major adjustments as well. Reduce the agents on my team. I went from 28 to 4 agents because it wasn't serving me, wasn't serving my bank account, even though I love those people, but it just wasn't the right fit. And the model, you know, changes. We just can't accept the model to always work. In fact, I just finished reading a great book, and really the agent was talking about cycles, or the business coach was talking about cycles of 10 years. We have 2 amazing years out of 10 that could just absolutely take you to the moon. Then you have 6 okay years, and then you have 2 years that can actually devastate you and bankrupt you. And I think we're in that 2-year cycle right now where it could definitely bankrupt you, because I had to make some major shifts to make sure that it wasn't going to like harm me forever. And I
Right.
think you're experiencing that as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's I've always believed like I'll be okay, but when it factors in and when it harms other people's livelihoods, Randy, it's really difficult. I find that really tough for me being a leader. I wish that it was easier for me to make those decisions because I know it's the right thing to do long term, but I've always been the optimist and like, okay, we'll figure this out. So we've been grinding through that. We've made some adjustments this year to try and offset that, and we're off to it. Like there's a lot of positive things that are happening, but boy, that 8 months was really hard. I mean, really hard. And I don't know that most people understand that is like the side of being a team leader. You're the last to get paid. Remember that. You don't get paid until every single person gets paid. And you have to make sure that every expense is covered and every bill and everything else. And well, I didn't really earn any money last year, to be honest. I just lived off my own personal savings, and between all my companies, I was grossing a few $1 million, and to literally not make money because of my overhead, that's my own fault. And I have to look in the mirror and take accountability for that as a leader. But man, that's a tough pill to swallow, knowing that it's my own fault and I'm the one that has to get myself out of it, but it just impacts so many people. So it's really difficult to make tough cuts sometimes.
Yeah. A lot of people don't realize, I think, how real estate cycles, and you can have monster years and you can have just absolutely the worst year of your life. And yet the business model of what we do just kind of keeps going the same. And it's really a bit of a challenging, you almost have to have some sort of forward thinking, future thinking to see that coming and make those adjustments quickly. And like you, I'm sure you're like me, being very optimistic, always thinking, I got this and we're going to be okay and we're going to weather this storm. And then everybody says, well, just keep going because you're going to look like a hero on the other side. You're going to gain market share. And I don't think that's always the case. You got to really protect your asset, which is your own personal bank account as well. How do you see that? Are you coming to grips in terms of how to handle that, or have you done some changes to make sure that you staying on the right side of the ledger?
Yeah, so I mean, our agent count has reduced as well. So we expanded to 24 agents, and I believe we're down to 9 agents. We have 4 licensed inside sales agents. We have 4 support staff. Like we have a lot of overhead. We one of the things we pride ourselves in is we deliver world-class service. If you look at our reviews, we have 291 5-star reviews. We
Awesome.
really lead our marketplace when it comes to service. And like I've always believed that if you lead with service, that's how you win. I really focus on making sure we have world-class training for our agents and support. And so I really do believe when it comes to how we handle a client interaction, we do a phenomenal job. We really do.
Mhm.
But what I've had to look at is like, things that I've never really paid attention to in the past, but like the expense that we're putting out there and the cost that we're spending to generate the business. And when you're spending $1.10 to make $1, that doesn't make a lot of sense. It's not very fiscally responsible. And so that is kind of where I'm at right now. And it's trying to figure out what that lean and mean business that allows us to still provide world-class service and takes care of the people that are here. And there's been some people, Randy, that have been incredibly loyal to me. And so I feel very incredibly loyal to them. So it's like, during tough times, I got to lean in and just figure it out. And we're doing that, like I said, we're starting to see things moving in the right direction, but it certainly hasn't been without its challenges and difficulties. And I realize a big part of that is I didn't make hard decisions soon enough. And I just kept my optimism and buried my head in the sand and just kept writing checks. And that's not always the right solution. You know, at some point you have to make tough decisions that really look after the betterment of your core people.
You know, we have a business model, and you probably were running the model and probably didn't make any adjustments to the model, the splits and all that. I'm sure we've got a lot of team leads listening to us right now. Is there something that you would now tell yourself, if you could go back a year or 2 years, what would you be telling yourself? You know, that person who was, 2 years prior, because now you know, what would you tell yourself?
Yeah, well, what I've actually pivoted in my coaching, because Randy, I've been coaching agents for 5.5 years.
Okay.
And I think sometimes some of the best coaches are the ones that have been through some stuff too, not just the coaches that always have highlight reels. So actually can like look at real tangible experiences. And one thing I'll tell you is there's a very small percentage of people that run teams profitably without their own production. Like it's a very small percentage. And what I actually coach students now is run it the way that you would run for example, a plastic surgery clinic. If you're the surgeon, you have amazing registered nurses that do patient care. You've got great reception, right? And then your job is to focus on a really strong marketing strategy to get people through the doors and then to deliver amazing, amazing results when it comes to taking care of your patients. But you have a very clear focus. And so instead of running a team on 50-50 splits, why not look to bring on a licensed agent that you can pay a base salary, give them a bonus structure, maybe some benefits, some stability and security that can work in your patients with you or your clients with you. Run that type of model. You can run that on the buy side, and eventually you can scale that on the listing side as well. That way you're involved in things like the consultations with the clients. You're able to come in and give some advice at key moments. If there's a second showing that needs to happen on a property, you can come in and do that, but you didn't have to go on the 20 other properties, right? Because you have an assistant that does that. And I think that, to be honest, is going to be a more profitable way to run a traditional team than going out and trying to do this 50-50 split model and you're working with independent contractors. The other thing is, because this person would be more of an employee, you're able to create a structure with them and some accountabilities. And there are a lot of people out there who really don't come to real estate because they're afraid of the volatility of it. But if you could create some stability and security for them, and they could make 80, 100, 120, 130,000 with no expenses really, they'd be very happy doing that. In fact, they probably would love the business, because for some people, they're not really good at being the rainmakers, but they're really good at servicing the clients exceptionally well. And so if you're a rainmaker, that's how I would potentially run it, to a point where you get enough leverage that you can pull yourself out of it and you can just focus on driving the marketing of the business. And I think the other thing is looking at some of the alternative models out there, like EXP, Real, like these models make sense. Like if you can diversify your income, I promise you, it makes these tough moments so much easier. Like I am so grateful that I average close to 30,000 a month in passive income to help me with these moments. Because if I didn't have that, Randy, like I would have had no choice to make some hard cuts like years ago, to be honest. Those things have helped subsidize and help me move forwards. So I would focus on that versus the traditional, just add a whole bunch of agents, because again, the percentage of people that do that effectively is so small. And you and I know that from the inside.
Yeah, it's remarkable, the net profit. If you're not selling personally, if you're the team lead and you're not engaged in selling, most of these teams run at single digit net profit. Like so you bring in $1 million, but you're not even taking home $100,000 at the end of the day. Let's be real, that is not a model that I want to work in. For me, my best years are when I was heavily engaged in actually, helping people buy and sell real estate. Then the numbers work. But this certainly makes it bulletproof. And what you shared about being, part of a brokerage, whether it's Real, whether it's EXP or something else where you have other income streams, it's essential, because that makes it then bulletproof, or more bulletproof anyways, because you've got more income streams coming in. So yeah.
It turns your business into an asset. Like my business right now is actually an asset for me, right? Like my biggest headache is I have a lot of overhead and expense, but those are choices that I've made and things that I could potentially change if I wanted to, right? But what I have is brand equity, and I have an asset that makes money and puts it in my account every single month. that right there in itself is huge, because most people, what they'll do is they'll hang their license somewhere and they're basically just paying rent to a national brand. And they're never even building up their own brand. And I'll tell you, consumers don't hire brokerages. They hire agents. They hire people that have strong reputations and brands. So if you're listening to this and you don't have a personal brand that you've been building, you're really leaving a lot of long-term money on the table, because the second that you stop selling real estate, your income is going to disappear. You need to build something that can be a tangible long-term asset for you. And that is like the best advice I can give. I was actually talking to some of my expansion partners yesterday who are in the UK. And in the UK, this is like brand new, right? Like in the UK, you basically are an employee. You're not actually an independent contractor. You're kind of an employee to brokerages, and their splits there are massive. Like
Yes.
they charge like team type splits, but don't give the same value. And so one of the things we talked about there is the shift in culture of agents starting to become independent and starting to build their own brands and realizing that they can be their own lead generators and that they can build something that's an asset. And so this concept is really starting to take off there. I've seen some really nice growth with our model there at EXP there. And it just goes back though to like the point that most realtors just come into it and they just think about exchanging time for money, and that's it. And they never think about, how do I turn my business into an asset? They don't think about an exit strategy. And, that's something that you and I, if everything just stopped tomorrow and we decided we're not doing selling real estate anymore, we still have income coming in every single month. But most of our colleagues don't have that. And it's like, how can we help them start realizing that that is so important? Set this up for yourself in the long term.
Well, and it's not even the fact that I don't want to do it anymore. Let's just say I can't do it anymore. I have a brain aneurysm. I dropped dead. What does my family receive from now 30 plus years of Randy grinding it out in real estate? Nothing, nothing. That real estate license is worth nothing other than fire starter. And so this is the difference that I think everybody needs to look at it and get over your fear of being curious. Like get over your fear of being curious. Like get curious and find out really what is on the other side. Maybe it doesn't fit you, maybe it does, but whatever, you got to be curious and let your imagination kind of run wild to find out what's there. Um,
Yeah, it's amazing the people that are starting to peek their head over the fence, asking
mhm.
questions, people that have been so loyal and traditional to these national brands that they have no equity position in. And now they're starting to realize like, oh, like maybe it would make sense to have diversity. Maybe it would make sense to have other things. And it's just funny. Humans are amazing, right? Whatever you put in your mind is what you're going to believe. So you can sell yourself on anything. You could tell yourself the reason you're successful is because you have Royal LePage as your brand or Remax, and you'll believe that. And everything that you do in your life will make you believe that that's true. But the second you realize that, hey, you know what? If I focus on building my own brand and having my own equity in the marketplace, you'll understand that now you're in a lot more control. The difference of the two is you actually have equity in something that you own versus a national brand that you don't own.
Yeah. And I believe that for years and years and years. I was just all in on my brand, which I thought that's the reason why I was as successful as I was. But nobody cares. Nobody said, well, I'm not using you anymore, Randy, because you're not with that national brand. You're now with another company called EXP. Nothing changed. Nothing changed. So
I remember, I don't know if you had this. I remember some of my colleagues at Remax when I made the switch, and some of the senior ones, right, that are still there with their national brand, and good for them. Like, make a business decision that makes sense for you. But they were telling me, you're making the big mistake. You're making a big mistake. I'll tell you, Randy, we had 21 listings that we had to switch over when we made the switch. All 21 of them switched over. Only one question came from the client. And all she asked was, oh, can you just tell me about EXP? And we told her about it. She's like, oh my God, that's amazing. I'm so excited for you. And she signed.
yeah.
And you know what? Our business metrics went up in every single category in our very first full year with EXP versus Remax.
Mm.
Why? Because we already established ourselves. We had a brand. We never relied on Remax. Remax wasn't our lead source. We had our own lead generation, our own systems, and clients knew us as a Sims Real Estate Group. That's who we were. And to be honest with you, there's been a benefit in us having our own identity because people see us as being our own company. That makes sense. Versus me being tied to the standards that vary within the Remax brokerage that I was, because every sign has to look the same. And if you look up their Google reviews, for example, they're not that great, right? And the brokerage now is a reflection of me. And I didn't never wanted to be tied to that. I wanted to have my own independent thing that could stand on its own. And so yeah, it's been actually freeing. Our signs when you drive around town, they're distinct. They're our signs. It's our brand that we own, our colors. I'm proud of that. It's something that's ours versus before. I mean, I would do everything. I'd try to put a topper, try to make us stand out a little bit, but I still had to follow their brand restricted colors. And it's just like, it never worked for me personally.
I love that. That's why I named my team the Xmas Real Estate Team to be Xmas at Remax, because I wanted to stand above the others in a different way. And so now I can just be Xmas powered by EXP, and it works. It just works. Hey, let's skip into another gear here. Let's talk a little bit about philosophy, mindset, and maybe some things that have really made you who you are, because you are awesome. Like, I mean, very few agents. In fact, I've never met an agent that's sold more than 100 homes in their very first year. I had a pretty good first year, but I didn't sell 100 homes. Tell me some of the secret ingredients that you have that allowed you to sell 135 homes in your first year.
Okay, so I'll tell you something that happens. Okay, so for me, for whatever reason, every 10 years in my adult life, I go through something.
Mm.
It's literally a pattern. I don't know what it is, but I'm going through it now. Just turned 40 and I did the same thing right around the age of 30. But there's two things you can do when you go through what we'll call as a rock bottom. Okay, you can just go to this, be the same as you always have been. You can have post-traumatic stress disorder from it, where it actually like sets you back, or you could have what's called post-traumatic growth. And I never even understood this when it happened to me, but there was a period of time, Randy, where after my first divorce there, I went through a period where because I didn't want to fight and I was the higher income earner, I literally made it so that I could set my ex up properly so that my kids would be okay. We didn't have to fight in courtrooms. So I put myself in a tough position, and I was like minus $80,000 in the hole because a lot of the assets I had, it wasn't the right timing to sell them at that point. I had some RSPs, but after taxes and everything else, I literally was sitting there. I'm minus $80,000 in the hole. I was a bank manager at a bank. I was making maybe about 110,000 a year, but like I was never seeing the end of, like, I could never see the light at the end of the tunnel of what I was doing. I had to make a change. And so I made a shift, and I went and worked and I consulted in the real estate space for a couple of years, helping realtors with how to set up their websites. I started researching and understanding how to convert leads. I just started really becoming a master of my own craft so that I could help my agents that I'd sold marketing products to. And then I made a decision. I was like, you know what? I need to go all in on me. Like, I have to go all in on me. These guys are struggling with this. I have a vision. I believe I can do this. And I'm minus $80,000 in the hole. I borrowed $53,000 from my brother-in-law at the time. I gave him my business plan. I told him, here's what I'm planning to do. And he said, I'll tell you what, I will invest in you. And he offered to charge me like a crazy amount. I think I paid $27,500 in interest that year. But I was so desperate, Randy. I had to burn the ships and I had no plan B. It was like go all in and change my fortunes because there's no other option for me. So I decided this was going to be my vehicle. And when you get to a place like that, where you have like your back's against the wall and you're all in and you're like, I'm doing this no matter what, like come hell or high water, I am going to figure this out or I will die trying. It changes the way you approach everything. It changes everything in your physiology. And what it starts doing is it really starts aligning the universe and your energy with like where you want to go. So the first thing that I did is I wrote out my business plan. I borrowed the money, which I paid back in month number 4, Randy, in full. Every dollar in full by month number 4. That's how much of a fire I had under my butt. But I believe that I was a top producer the minute I made the decision to get into real estate. I had that locked in my brain. I am going to be the best of my craft. I am the best. Immediately, I got in that belief. I set a picture. I had a 5-year plan that I would build a business and exit production in my business. I would build a brand right away. I had that in my mind. So immediately from day one, this is my mindset. Then I knew that I needed to have the same actions of a top producer. In fact, my whole goal was I was going to outwork every single agent, because one thing I noticed with realtors is there was a lot of full belly realtors that made a lot of money and really didn't push themselves that hard. And I knew that I could bring work ethic and enthusiasm like you've never seen before. I knew I could outwork every single one of them. So mindset was the first step. So I believed I was a top producer. I started acting like one by showing up and putting in and doing the work, the activities. And then I knew that I just needed time. I just needed enough time. And my initial goal was to do 43 home sales in my first year. When I wrote out my little plan, it was 43 was the number. And then I realized after 90 days, when I had 27 deals closed and pending, And I'd messaged the technology founder of Real Geeks, Jeff Manson. I just had sent him a message randomly one day on Facebook to say, hey, I just want to thank you for this amazing technology. Like, here's what I'm doing in my business. And like, I just want you to know I'm a really big fan. There was this show, Keeping It Real, that they did for agents that I used to watch, and it was inspiring to me. And then he said, hey, I would love to have you on a guest. I was like, oh my God, I never thought in a million years. So I did that show. I was like 4 months into the business, and I told him where I was at. And I remember him making me publicly say, Jason, you need to set a bigger goal. And so I publicly at that point had set a goal that I was going to do 90 transactions, 90. And I remember I got some message. I didn't realize people in my local market watched it. I got some message of people looking at me like, who is this guy, whatever. And then Jeff said, hey, I'm going to follow up with you next year and see how you do. And the next year when he'd followed up with me, I'd set up 135 deals that first year. And you know what it was? Literally tunnel vision, obsessed. I was obsessed with this goal. I was obsessed with the plan that I created, and I focused on what I had control over, which was my output of energy, what I was doing every day, my very specific measurable activities. Minimum, I was having 20 proactive real estate conversations a day. I was sending probably 30, 40 text messages minimum a day. I was doing bomb videos, probably do an hour of bomb videos minimum every day. Like, I was taking so much action. I was creating content weekly, and I just stuck to my very clear 1-page business plan that was basically written almost on a napkin, but I just stuck with that, and I didn't get shiny object syndrome. I focused on what I had control over. And I'll tell you, that was the key to success. If you're sitting there right now listening to this and you're anxious and you're feeling like I'm not where I want to be in my life, it's because you're not taking action on something. You're not dealing with something that you need to deal with right now. Anytime that I've had anxiety, and I've battled manageable anxiety my whole life, Randy, to be honest, it's still something that I work through to this day. As successful as I've been, I'm telling you, I still battle through it. And the one thing that always gets me through it is action. Anybody listening right now, when you're taking action, do you feel anxious? Never. You'll never feel anxious when you're doing the things that you know you should be doing. And the other thing that you guys have to recognize too is you cannot work on motivation. You have to work on your standards. For example, today, the last thing I wanted to do at noon was go to the gym, but it's a standard in my life, right? I've made this a standard, and there's no, like, whether I'm happy, sad, depressed, anxious, I'm going to the gym and I'm working out, because my worst day in the gym for me will make more benefit than my best days, because when you're really motivated, it's really easy to do things. It's when you're not motivated to do them that's where you get the impact. And it's the same thing in your business. And if you can get to a point where you set your standards higher and you start focusing on that versus your motivation, because that's fleeting, you will see massive results and a fundamental change to how you do life.
Well, one of the questions I have is, what are your change agents? And you just nailed it. Like, take action, put up standards. All of that just resonates so much with me, and just being a doer rather than a thinker. Sometimes we overthink things. You just got to get out there and do it. Along the way, I'm sure you've really struggled. Well, maybe you haven't struggled with this, but a lot of us beat ourselves up. And right now there's a lot of agents out there really struggling and beating themselves up. They don't think they're good enough, and they don't think they're worthy enough. How do you get through that? And did you ever have some of those struggles of maybe even forgiving yourself to get through some stuff that you're working on?
I'm going through some of that right now. I haven't done everything perfect. I haven't made every decision perfect in my life. And so sometimes I do beat myself up, because I have this high standard of how I should conduct and how I should show up. And you know what? I haven't always done that. There was a time in real estate, I gained 47 pounds because I focused on everything but what was really important, which was focusing on me first. I needed to keep myself as a priority, and I didn't. I put everybody else's needs before my own, because you know what? I didn't want to do the internal work. It was easier for me to just focus on everybody else. But one thing I've learned from she's literally like my best friend in the world. I love this woman so much. My current spouse, actually. We're separated, but she's an amazing woman. Okay. And we have an amazing friendship, and we get along really well, and we really co-parent our kids. But the one thing that she always did really well is she was very selfish with her time, in a good way though. She always prioritized her fitness, her health, taking care of her. And the way she always explained it is, for me to show up as a better person for my kids, for everybody else, I need to take care of me. And I always had this servant mentality, which is I need to serve everybody else. And I always put myself to the side, and it was very obvious. I mean, my me doing that was not sustainable. And if I could go back in time, if I could coach myself, I would have said, Jason, make fitness a standard. Take care of yourself first, then your relationships second, your hobbies, your passions, and then third, build your business around those two things. Not business first and then whatever's left over put into everything else. And another thing that her and I have talked about too that can strengthen a marriage or relationship is you need to spend quality time dating each other consistently. And when you have little people that enter your life, it's so easy to drift apart, right? And it's so great to have this amazing like realization, and her and I are on such a good page together, and we have such mutual respect that we can have these conversations and things that we can learn that we can take into our future relationships. But like big part of all of this, and why I'm telling you for anybody listening, is if you can sit back and really evaluate the things that you're doing in your life, and you really can take the time to learn the lessons along the way when you have these hardships, that's how you grow. That's how you can get to a place of post-traumatic growth versus post-traumatic stress disorder where you are the victim. And so I've had to point the finger at myself many times and say, Jason, the reason you're in this position is your fault, and you're the only person that can fix it. And the second I take accountability, it puts me in a position where I can now have control of moving forwards. The reason my business lost money last year is nobody's fault but my own, because I didn't make proactive decisions that I knew that I needed to. Does that make sense? And the reason why you're not successful in your real estate business right now is nobody else's fault but your own, because you're not taking the massive levels of action. You didn't make the adjustments that were necessary. Maybe you have to work twice as hard right now to get the business, but you didn't adapt, and that's why you are where you are. So as opposed to sitting there beating yourself up over it, create a plan and get back to taking those levels of action that are going to get you out of your anxiety, that are going to make you feel like you're winning the day. For example, one thing I teach all my students, set a goal every day to do all your heavy lifting before noon, whether it be your fitness, health, all that stuff, get it all done before noon. Your measurable activities, like the number of calls you want to have, the texts, the emails, the video emails, set some priority time and have a specific number every single day that you need to do Monday to Friday, and then put it in your calendar, and it's non-negotiable. The number one thing I'll teach students right off the bat is when somebody asks you for an appointment at a certain time and you have something booked, you say, you know what, Randy, I would love to show you that property that time. However, I have a commitment already booked. How does this time work? And you offer an alternative that works in your schedule. That right there, learning the art of saying no without making people feel like you're saying no to them or putting a hand in their face, will change a lot of people's lives. The most successful agents long-term that I've seen are the ones that manage their business and don't have their business manage them.
Wow, that was really awesome. Thanks for being so vulnerable there, Jason. You know, relationships, without relationships, we have nothing. And this business of real estate can really chew up relationships. So I really appreciate you sharing that. One of the things that my wife and I did years ago, and somebody put us onto this, is taking a honeymoon trip every year. So every year we would go away as if we were going on our honeymoon without our kids. And of course, our kids, you know, you think you have to do everything with your kids, but if you don't have what you have nothing with the kids as well. So that was a really great takeaway for us to do that. And so I really appreciate you sharing that. What is your greatest gift, do you think, Jason?
I think my ability to communicate.
Mm.
I think I'm a really strong communicator. And I think being able to communicate means that I am able to ask the right questions and understand people, where they're coming from, and you know, being able to come from a place of empathy with people. I think that's one of my great superpowers. My mom always told me, my parents are French Canadian, and she told me my name, Jason, in French meant communication. Well, it's an English name, but the way she understood it when she gave it to me was communication, which is super interesting because literally how I've earned my living my whole adult life is around communicating. Everything I've done has been a people business. That's where I thrive. So I'm definitely a people person. I think my emotional intelligence has been one of my better assets that have helped me. But sometimes, just like other people, you get blinded by focusing on other things and the wrong things, and you forget to just have gratitude for the things that you have in front of you. In fact, all of us have everything we need to have the most fulfilling life literally right underneath our nose.
Mm-hmm.
And we lose sight of it because we get so future focused and we get focused on so many other things, but everything you need is right there in front of you. And when you can like really understand that and start working through that, you'll start making some internal breakthroughs. And I'm in the process right now of rediscovering that, because I got too caught up focusing on the future again in my life. And what I'm really trying to focus on is how to be more present and how to be more comfortable being just Jason and not always focusing on everybody else, but focusing on me too. And again, that's a lesson I learned from my ex, who's again one of my best friends in the world, and something that her and I've talked a lot about, which has helped me grow and become better as a person.
You know, that's a really good point, because we are driven people. We're entrepreneurs and we're driven, and we want to drive to be better every day. But what happens is we just get so consumed with growth that sometimes we forget about the people around us, or being present, or serving us, serving even our true selves, because we're always trying to like evolve, evolve, evolve. But what if I have evolved enough? What if you've evolved enough, Jason, right? So this is a real challenge for driven, motivated entrepreneurs.
It's man, I meet so many people and they just focus on everything about their goals, but they're not thinking about the people and the relationships in their life.
Mhm.
You know, a simple exercise that I recommend everybody do, and I've done this for years, and I need to get back to it because I fell off the wagon the last 6 months. But it's sending out daily gratitude messages to people in my life, just letting people in my life know how I truly feel about them, because you have no idea the impact that that can make on somebody.
Yeah.
You might just catch them at a moment where they're feeling really depressed, they're going through a hardship, they, you know, whatever, something's happened, they've just found out they have a parent who's sick, who knows? And you just sending them something that was genuine from the heart, that could just literally change the impact of their day. Everybody on this call just took away that from today and started doing gratitude every day. Write down 3 things you're grateful for and send out 2 gratitude messages a day to people you care about, and just made that a practice. The amount of blessings that would come from that long term would be unbelievable.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. It can literally change the outcome of your life. And when you're coming from a place of feeling grateful and having gratitude, it makes you look at things so much more optimistically and positively, and you feel so much better. And so that's something that I'm coaching myself through at the moment, is getting back to focusing on gratitude and the things that I'm grateful for. Because again, everything that I've set up in my life, everything I need to be happy is right in front of me. And I just need to go back to the basics of focusing internally and then being grateful for what I have, as opposed to worrying about what I haven't built yet or what I haven't accomplished. You know, people get so focused on envy and trying to be somebody else. And it's like, hey, how about you just focus on being you and the best version of you? Because success is not monetary. I can tell you, having made money, it's great, but like, it's not going to make you a happier person. It doesn't improve the quality of your relationships. What improves the quality of your relationships is time with the people that you care about. That's the most important thing too. Money is an amplifier, but it's not going to make you happier.
Well said, well said. Let's shift gears into leadership and vision. And when you think of leadership, what do you think of? What is Jason as a leader? How does
Um,
Jason show up as a leader?
Jason's a passionate leader. Jason leads with a lot of heart. Jason has learned through his life to try to manage his emotions better, right? Because I can wear my heart on my sleeve, and I'm very much an optimist. But I'm definitely a passionate leader. I care about people deeply, and it's like it's a double-edged sword. Sometimes I care so much that it like consumes me, and that's something I'm working through, how to be empathetic but not take on other people's problems, because that's been my thing as a leader. But yeah, I just lead with a lot of heart, passion. You know, I try and lead by example where I can too. I think that's important.
Who's influenced you in your leadership? Do you have anybody that is specific to this, or do you get a lot of your leadership thoughts, decisions out of books? Where does that come from?
Yeah, that's a good question. You know, so I've invested a lot of money in coaching and different things over the years. I network with some really brilliant people. And what I've found is I've kind of like created this invisible board of directors in my life. And I have like close relationships with people who like have one thing that they do exceptionally well in their life that I strive to like learn from, if that makes sense. So as opposed to me like looking at every person and trying to find a perfect human being, because there is no such thing, I focus on the strength that they bring and what they do well. And that's where I seek guidance. So I actually have some amazing friends and people in my life that lead in different ways. And it's not always monetary or success driven. Sometimes it could be the relationship they have with their spouse, could be the relationship, how they show up as a father, could be who they are as a leader in their business, right? But that's, for me, that's where I get a lot of my inspiration to be better. I feed off the people that I surround myself with. and I'm very like loyal to the people around me. And like, I have this like amazing group of people that I feel just a genuine affinity for. And so, and they're handpicked people that I've sort of built relationships with over the years.
Mhm. And from those people that you've picked, I love that, the invisible board of directors. I'm going to use that. Thank you. Um, they, of course, have been teaching you over the years. Is there something that you would wish that you would have had them earlier in your life? And maybe one attribute or one board of director that you had earlier in your life that would have maybe changed the course of where you're at today? Or are you happy with how things have progressed?
I gotta say that like I'm happy that I've had this perfectly imperfect life. You know, I
Mm.
haven't had everything go exactly the way it should. I've made mistakes. I've learned from them. I've not learned from some that I'm still learning through. Like, there's a lot of things, but like when I look at it, I can't look at things with regret. What I have to look at is, okay, what can I learn from those experiences? How can I be better? Because the truth is, there's no such thing as anybody that's done life perfect. It doesn't exist. It never will exist. So like there's so many lessons that you learn along the way. So I can't say that I look at like, oh, I wish I had this, that, because the truth is the reason I'm able to be here today is because of some of the setbacks, some of the adversity, some of the things that I went through, some of the hard lessons that I had to learn. And so going through that is what's shaped me into the person that I am. Because I'll tell you, some of the most successful people that I've met are the ones that have gone through adversity and hardship. And I actually truly believe this. I think as a man, you really do need to go through some hardship to really find out like the true side of like what you're made of. I feel like, and again, some women too as well. I'm just speaking from a male perspective because I'm a man, but like I feel like hardship is what can really make or break you. And it's an opportunity that you can really grow and become stronger in that masculine energy or frame that we have. And so I actually kind of look at it with gratitude. I mean, I look back at some of the major setbacks and I'm like, you know what? Good. I'm glad that happened to me. Good. This last year, good. I'm glad I went through that because it's making me realize what's truly important. It's making me have to reflect inward. When things are going really well, is not when you get the most growth. Sometimes it's when you go through some really hard times. That's when you have lessons that you have to learn. And it's the universe's way of saying, hey, here's a blind spot. You need to really focus on this right now. And some people will keep making the same mistake or they'll blame everything else. But the truth is, if you just take accountability and seek the lesson that universe has just given you, now you can get back onto a trajectory where you can become an enlightened version of yourself. So I'm on Jason like 3.0 at this point. I'm working on Jason 3.0 right now. And so it's a forever evolving process, but that's kind of how I choose to look at my life. So I don't look at things with regret, Randy. More so it's like, what would I learn from those experiences that make me better going forward?
Hmm. Yeah, vulnerability sometimes I think often brings out the greatest gifts we have that we don't even know we have until we're pushed into those situations. And then you find out, oh my goodness, this is a gift that I have, and I didn't even know it because you weren't pressed and pushed, and that adversity didn't bring it out until it was too heavy. It just all of a sudden appeared. Um, one of the things you mentioned, some of the people that have the most success go through adversity, but I've met a lot of people that are just, I'll call them simple. They just live a very, very simple life. Their their expectation as far as business or financial this or financial that is very, very low, and they just seem to like go through life like with a smile on their face and never a fear or a worry in the world. Are we sometimes living, are we sometimes in the wrong lane, living in the wrong lane?
It's possible. I mean, my definition of success is, can you look in the mirror and truly feel like you are the best version of yourself and that
Mm.
you're happy
And are
and
you being your
never
true?
wanted to, and you're being your true self? Are you being authentically you?
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of people that are living their life for other people because they want to please other people or they want to please their parents or they want to show up a certain way. And it's like, how about this? How about you focus on living for you and that you can feel proud of how you're living your life and look in the mirror and say, I'm actually genuinely happy. Because I'll tell you, I know some people that are not high income earners who are incredible husbands, amazing fathers, and they're super happy. And I look at them and I'm like, man, I really admire you. And those are some people that are on that invisible board of directors. And they don't even know that they're on my board of directors, but they are because of who they are. And again, there's something that I admire and look at those people with. So I've never ever been a hierarchy guy. I've never been a clout chaser. I've never been one of those guys that goes to conferences and tries to like be in all these rooms. I surround myself with quality people, and I don't care what their income or status is. I care about them as people. So like if I'm at a conference, Randy, I promise you I'm the guy that's gonna have the most fun, and I've got good people around me that are genuinely people that I actually want to spend time with, and I get more fulfillment and growth from that than I do going in and trying to have this superficial conversation with somebody that I just am not into. Like I like depth. I like to be around good people. And guess what? When you surround yourself with people like that, you start realizing that the people that you connect with, a lot of them are like super successful. And so what happens is you start attracting these amazing friendships and people in your life that are built on a foundation of actual genuine connection. And you didn't even know what they did or how successful they were. It was just who they were as a person. And then you find out these amazing other layers after. And that's the other beauty of approaching it that way. So for me, that's how I do life. And I see some people that are literally just, they're trying to be in a room with all these people, and maybe there's a benefit to that, but I feel like the best way to earn your way into those rooms is to build quality relationships around you with people first. And you'll realize that everything you need is probably right there. You just needed to build a connection a little deeper.
That sounds like a great definition for the Return on Life podcast.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. Hey, let's close it out here with a speed round.
Sure.
Awesome. Well, fine dining, takeout, Uber Eats, or a home cooked meal. What's Jason doing?
I would, if somebody's cooking the home cooked meal for me, I'll take that all day long.
I love it too. Yeah, nothing like a good home cooked meal.
You can taste the love. Like when somebody like makes food for you, like there's nothing that like has more, like you can taste the love. It immediately gets an extra 1 or 2 points on the rating scale for me because of that. So definitely that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Hey, what do you do to let your hair down? Are you off to the gym, or what do you do on a day off and you got nothing going on and you just can do whatever you want?
I love to travel. It's one of my greatest passions. I always dreamed of building this life that I can go and travel the world and create experiences with people that I love. So like I love to travel, you know. My future companion is somebody that's going to love traveling the world with me because that's important. Obviously my kids, I love being involved in their sports, right? Like their activities. Like that's probably one of the funnest things for me as a dad is like watching my kids play sports. Like I love that so much. Being there and creating memories. If you know, like this weekend, I went out for a really nice nature hike. It was really beautiful on the weekend, and I found this really nice trail, and then it had like a waterfall at the bottom. And so I just went and grounded my feet, went with a nice friend, and you know, we just had a nice conversation. It was just like pleasant. So going out in nature is always fun. But I love adventures, Randy. If I'm being honest, like with you, like that spontaneity that I love, like I love being able to go on a new adventure and experiencing new foods and cultures. That's for me is like what I love to do.
Amen. You know, it's about experiences. It's not about how much money you end up in the bank. It's about the experiences that you get along the way. So I love it. Love it. I know you're into music. What's your favorite band?
Oh man.
You have a
Favorite.
favorite. Can you say a favorite?
Well, so okay, so if I'm trying to do a big, like a heavy lift in the gym and I got to get myself in a state,
Yeah.
it's Rage Against the Machine, Killing in the Name of, or whatever it's called. Like that's the song that I'll listen to get me in a state. It's not necessarily my favorite band, but that song just does something to me. It gets me into a state. I'm a big hip hop guy.
Mhm.
I love like the old school, like Tupac, Biggie, Nas, that kind of stuff. So I enjoy hip hop. I was born in the '80s, so you know that comes naturally. So yeah, for me, those would probably be my favorites.
Awesome. Would you prefer text, email, telephone call, or in person?
Person.
In person. Okay.
It
Love
depends
it.
who it is. It depends who it is and what it's for. But I love one of my favorite things when I travel or I go to a conference is putting my phone away, literally putting it away and being so present with the people that I'm with. It just makes me feel so alive, and the quality of the conversations and the connection just goes through the roof. And one thing that I'm working on is doing that at home as well when I'm with my kids and like people that I'm with, making them feel like they're the only person in the world that matters.
I was just going to ask you about that. Do you do that at home too? Because that's such a difficult thing for us to do as agents to put the phone down and leave it alone and park it in a drawer for the evening because we always think we're going to miss out on something big, right? That's a challenge.
Yeah, 100%. It's something I'm working on.
Cool. Audible or book?
Book.
Book. Love it. And last question. If you were a scratch and sniff sticker, your scratch and sniff sticker and I rubbed your shoulder, what would I smell? What's the aroma?
Uh, Gee, that's a good question. What would you smell?
What do
My
you think?
cologne, my cologne that I wear, which is, what is it? It's like a Gucci cologne, I think.
Okay, I thought you were going to say the Mother Earth because you're out in nature and you just fell in love with Mike, but
Well, I want to smell good, so I think my Gucci cologne.
okay, Gucci it is. Jason, you've been an incredible guest. Thank you for opening up, like really being real. That's so I don't know, it's so special when people get really, really real. So I really appreciate you being vulnerable and real. And I want to thank you for being a great guest on the Return to Life podcast.
My pleasure, my friend, and I look forward to seeing you at a conference very soon.
Awesome. Thank you, Jason.
Thanks, Randy. Cheers.